Well, the word hoax is a bit of a misnomer. Hoax implies somebody wanting to go out and deceive other people, and I don't think that it's. I think it's misused in that context. The thing is, we set up this black and white thing where it's either hoaxed or it's genuine. And if it's genuine, that implies it's some sort of unknown force, aliens, or some aspect of the invisible world. And if it's not that, then it's hoaxed. And I think that's a completely wrong language to use. So I don't think I've ever really hoaxed. I've made crop circles, but I've never really hoaxed. Originally, my interest was in finding out who was making circles. I decided that it was most probably people. So, in the process of finding out who it was, it involved hanging around in a lot of wheat fields, and it seemed sensible at the time to try it oneself. So I and others did. Once that stage had been gotten over, it became quite compulsive. It became more to do with the creative compulsion. Well, they require trouble. The size and designs you choose to make require trouble. They take a lot of effort, and that's the effort that needs to be put into it. In a very arbitrary way, I tend to regard the products of people who don't go to the same trouble as hoaxes. I tend to be dismissive of that work. But the people who do go to that effort and take that trouble, to me, the product they come up with is a genuine product. In the same way as a painting would be. If somebody had gone to a lot of trouble creating a painting, there would be no question of its authenticity. You would have some sort of respect for it. And as the language we're using is genuine or fake or hoax, then to me that's genuine, and there's no question of it. A better answer would be, well, conscientiousness. That's why we go to all that trouble, because it requires trouble, because it inspires people. Because it's the nature of creativity, it requires to be done. In the same way as anybody creating anything, it's required to be done. And some people are prepared to do it, and some people perhaps aren't. Well, ask me again, I insist.
Oh, okay. Why do you go to so much trouble?
Because it's required to be done. Of course.
Next question.
I think the world would be a better place if the Circlemakers made a bit of dosh too, but there again they do, and you know, it doesn't anger me at all. Well, the thing is, there's no joke being played. It's as far as we're concerned, we're creating new aspects of the same thing. Yes, in the same way as you. I mean, somebody said once that an artist paints the same painting over and over again, writes the same book over and over again, and sure, you're making circles over and over again, but you're not really making the same designs. You know, it just needs to be done every year.
Why?
Well, I guess it doesn't really, but some might think it does, because it's good that it does. It's beneficial that it does. To admirers of the landscape. Ask me why the sky's blue, Grant.
Why is the sky blue, Robert?
I have no idea. Because it's required. It's required that it's blue. But am I perpetuating a myth?
I've only got your food on these barbecues.
Yes, but it's not my myth. It's other people's myth. So to me, I'm perpetuating something else. You know, I mean, you might ask, is it important that there's a mystery? That would be a very interesting question to ask. And yes, it is important. Because of the values and the meanings people place on these things, they decide that it's rubbish if it's man-made, and it's brilliant if it's genuine. So mystery does play a fairly crucial element in how it's valued. I would hate to live in a world where there was no mystery. I would suggest that there was some somewhere if someone said there wasn't. Phantom hitchhiking. You know, people who are seen on the side of roads and get later reported as phantom MIB visitations. I mean, you know, I've been described as that. You know, purely from existing somewhere. You know, how you're seen. I've been sitting at home watching telly in London and have been seen in Wiltshire as this somehow paranormal phenomenon. So there is this tendency of people to contribute to other people's expectations, which is a side of the paranormal which needs to be looked at, I think. Do I write and have credits for my writing? Yes, of course. And do I insist upon a credit for my photographs? Of course. But do I crave publicity? No, I don't think so. I would say no. Circlemakers tend to shy away from publicity. Being a retired circle maker, I feel immune from any such questions. I mean, I have no control over whether people pull the wool over their eyes or not. I certainly wouldn't.
Do you enjoy seeing them do it?
I don't relate to the question, really.
Do you enjoy seeing them do it?
I'm
obviously do.
I'm used to seeing them do it. No, I don't enjoy. I find it kind of boring a lot of the time. I don't really. I can't say that I enjoy it. I mean, we live in a world where, you know, internet access and everything, and I'm on the internet and I read about this and that, and sometimes it involves me, and I don't go away thinking, oh, I've enjoyed that. I kind of think the word sheesh a lot. An internet term, thinking, God, you know. So no, I don't enjoy it. I tend to sort of get quite disgusted by it a lot. Because the phenomenon isn't owned by anybody. So I can't control what other people, what meanings and values other people place on it. So just because people say that it's made by aliens, it's not my fault they think it's made by aliens, you know. So I'm not controlling it. All I'm doing is giving people the opportunity to think, I guess, think what they like, you know.
Was the risk of being prosecuted and being caught for trespass worth it?
Well, it wasn't. It was never really a risk, to be frank. I mean, there was never really a risk of being caught. I mean, there were a lot of threats made, but there was never any risk. I mean, obviously, if it played percentages, you didn't put yourself in a risk situation. If you saw somebody walking into a field, you'd make off the other way. I mean, there was no risk about it. You can't keep pressing home the same point. I mean, that lasts maybe a month or 2 months. And then you realise that people aren't going to actually... That the key to all this is that people aren't actually looking for answers. They're not interested in answers. And once you realise that, they're interested in a sort of a social habit. You know, if there was an answer, then they wouldn't be able to come to... There would be no reason to come to the barge every year, you know. So And once you've got the gist of that, then it becomes something else. And you wallow around for a little while, and then it becomes art. You think, Charles Sarch is into this stuff. Yes, that's a good way of looking at it. It's art. And I wholeheartedly believe now that it is art. It fits the complete criteria of art, in the sense that art is supposed to fill people with experience, and people are supposed to get an experience of what they're observing or looking at or being in, and yes, it fits that criteria perfectly. So yes, one becomes an artist, and it's brilliant. I have absolutely no right, or I'll give you another answer. I have every right in the world. I haven't decided which one yet. Besides the threatening mail, the physical threats, the abuse, no. Not much trouble. The damage to cars, the hassle. You know, they always seem to phone up when I'm watching a good football match. Apart from that, no trouble at all. The most common, which I've also experienced, are bright flashes of light in the direct vicinity of your activities. The other ones have been more mental. I've made a circle, and I've made an avenue, and then I'm down at the bottom of the avenue, and as I'm making my way back up the avenue, I'll think, what if there's a devil sitting in the circle? You know, and I'll start doing my head in a little bit, and I'll get there and there isn't one. So I'll realise, well, maybe that's why people see devils. You know, that's something interesting to think about. But apart from that, no. Occasional meteorological anomalies, I would say. Bright flashes are a bit of a mystery, and they're talked about amongst Circlemakers in pubs over beer. To make a circle.
Yeah, I'm just like Joe.
A couple of people, large pictogram, 400 footer, 1.5 hours.
And do you feel you can do this in complete darkness with no moon?
Full moon makes it very, very difficult. You call something off.
Well,
It's too
people
bright.
Would see you. So
people would see
so
you.
a half moon or a quarter moon is better.
Yeah,
But
or
you can
no
do it with
moon.
no
Yeah,
moon.
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
because eyes adjust to the light. Everyone who lives in the country knows this.
Oh. So a lot of people say, oh, they couldn't possibly do this in the 5 hours of darkness, and
Well, a lot of people say a lot of things, but they, I mean, the object of this exercise with me initially was to try it, and once I'd tried it, you found that a lot of these statements were not true.
and then how do you get a group of people that can follow orders and do these things with such precision without any mistakes?
Well, 2 people
Two people. Only.
following orders.
Okay. So you wouldn't get a whole group of people. It'd be too hard to control.
Well, I would say lately, in the last year or so, you've had more than 2 people working on, you know. And I would say often it goes wrong.
Something happens.
Yeah, I mean, there was a very large formation in this vicinity last year. Very large. Probably the largest one you can think of, which went wrong. And if you look at it from a purely aesthetic point of view, it didn't go wrong. If you look at the photograph, if you look at it from the position of being there, you can see how it kind of did go wrong. Most of these jobs are done by 2 in the morning, and people are at Membry service station by 3. You know. There's a obvious sense of denial somewhere, and I get accused of having a strong sense of denial, and that explains skepticism. That skepticism is denial, because these things are true. And from my point of view, the denial is on the other side. I mean, evidence has been put forward, blah, 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 of this, that, and the other, and still 7 years later you get people saying, well, people couldn't do this because And to me, that's a sense of denial. To me, it's all about, it's this weird, twisted, kind of wrangled thing about human potential.
Yeah.
How I say, yes, people can do this. People can go out and they can create this thing, and there's a bit, okay, they go off in secret, and it's dark, and there's a big mystery about it. And that is, to me, is human potential. But there's this other side which says that's denial, saying that. Human potential is about communicating with these things and believing in this kind of invisible world that no one can kind of quite put their finger on. And there's the line, you know, who's right? I think it's very interesting, the line. I like looking at the line.
You like walking it?
Well, I come here and apparently I do walk it. But to me, I'm just coming in for a drink, and here I am, you know.
Do you feel like being part of the phenomenon is actually help perpetrate it?
Yeah, I kept it going for a few years.
Right.
It's during a sticky period.
But I mean, do you
91, between 91 and 94, we kind of, myself and a few others, kept it going when it was
Just
like,
even on camera.
there was a feeling during 92, 93 that the thing needed to be kept going after the debacle of Doug and Dave, and that it was a good phenomenon, and it needed to be continued, and there was a bit of that feeling. And looking back, I think that's probably true.
So you do feel like some parts of it are genuine, like they come from somewhere we can't explain?
I think that if you assume for a moment that they're all, it doesn't matter how they get there. If they're all, say they're all man-made, all of them. The fact that people are experiencing things and being healed and feeling good, that to me is very, very interesting and needs investigation. Science doesn't look at that. So even at its basis level, if you strip the phenomenon down to nothing, you know, to complete nonness, you know, no kind of paranormal reasons that things are appearing, the fact that people are interacting with them in the way that they do is, I think, very interesting and very important. And there's a lot to be learned. And I would say that as it stands is, you know, sufficiently paranormal. So I mean, you can kind of have me or not have me, you know, you know, in it, and it's still paranormal. I think that's quite interesting. The effect, people have got completely the wrong idea of art. I think they think it's something. They view it in terms of objects, but it should be viewed in terms of experience. If you look at a painting, it's not the painting that's got any value; it's the experience you get from it, which is the art. It's the value and the meaning.
I think Sotheby's would differ with
Oh, they die because they have this completely false way of placing value on stuff, and it's all coming out, isn't it? About what's fake, why, you know, it's ridiculous. Art is about the experience you get from something. So therefore, art could be anything in theory. Anything that you get an experience from, and there's nothing greater than a massive crop formation that even as a bonus has a kind of symbolism attached to it. You know, it's in the shape of something. But even just a simple circle, you know, larger the better, much as you can manage in a night, is going to create. It's going to be like this temporary sacred site, and you're going to get more buzz than you will from visiting Canterbury Cathedral, because at least you kind of understand that people built that, but the mystery is kind of important, you know. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a complete kind of Philistine when it comes to understanding crop circles.
Well, a lot of people say you're a negative person, but if you're making something that turns out to be positive, how is that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of people say that because it suits them to say that. A lot of people will say what suits them.
Oh, nice one, Birdie.
You know, and because I embody a threat to them, because they're trying to place their own meaning and their own value on something, and they're all trying to be important. You know, you'll notice a lot of people in this industry, a lot of the people in this pub are all trying to be, it's all about how important they are, you know. But
and disproving each other.
Yeah, and disproving, arguing mostly, it's all rubbish, you know. I mean,
I still don't get a sense of it.
well, you're asking sort of leading questions. I mean, there is.
Really, I don't
Well, you
think
are.
so.
Well,
I'm just interested. I don't need to be one way or the other.
well, I'm interested in questions because the way you ask them means something. And when you say to me, why is it that you felt the need? I mean, you're assuming that I did feel the need.
I am assuming that you did feel that.
Well, that's not true.
Why is that?
I didn't.
If that was not true, why how
Well, it's
come
not
you
true
have
because I didn't feel it.
a fair, well, let me. You have
What motivated you?
You have a fairly
What
fairly
interesting
public-
question.
Yeah, a fairly public voice.
Yes,
in
but
the media talking about those
but
things.
my publicness isn't down to me. It's down to what other people have imposed upon me.
I don't think that's true because I don't have any articles in the Observer. I don't have any articles in 4TM Times. I don't have any articles in UFO Reality. I don't have any articles anywhere.
Well,
Yet
I
am a
have
free
an
thinker
article
and I
in
have
one
many
of those
opinions.
publications.
Why is it that your opinions are? Why do you feel the need to publish those opinions?
Well, it's not up to me whether they're published or not.
I know, but you write them and
Because
send them. Why do you
Line up those
what
mirrors.
for?
Well, I don't write and send anything. People ask me to write things.
They do?
Yes.
Beef steak 23.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay, Rob.
I mean, somebody's just asked me to write the potted history of crop circles, blah blah blah, for for a well-known newsstand magazine now. And you ask me why they asked me. I don't know. Why do they ask me? Yeah. The best story, let me think. Well, there was a great one about, I don't know, the shootout at the OK Wagon and Horses. I mean, that was when there was all this sort of photography of other people. I think the best one was when the police came round to my house demanding to know information about circle making. And Jim and I were about to publish a story in the Independent magazine about circle makers, and we kind of felt that we knew who was, this was years ago, we felt that we knew who was kind of doing these jobs, and that let slip, and the police came round, and I had to explain to the police that it was really it really needed to be sorted out journalistically rather than legally. You know, it was not a police problem. It was a journalistic. It required some understanding of how some young people were desperately trying to communicate with aliens, and that there was not really anything, not really any kind of rule of law about that, and there's nothing that they should be troubled with. You know, that was a good one. And I phoned up Pusey Police Station, and they said, "I don't want to get into a philosophical argument about this, Mr. Irving." So that was that. Didn't it?
My first experience of, going into crop circles was purely around the time the BBC were filming in Westbury on the Westbury White Horse, doing a study on some of the crop circles, and it just so happened that night that I was leaving my house to go into the back garden and hang some washing up, and as I did I saw what I can only explain as triangular craft in the sky with 3 lights on each tip and more deep red light in the middle, and I was quite shocked and startled by this and ran back in to grab my mum for her to have a witness of it, and my mum came out but she didn't catch it. It was too late for her to see, and I found myself lying to my mum and saying I need to fill up my car with fuel for work tomorrow, knowing that the only 24-hour garage was about sort of 8-9 miles away towards Westbury, where the BBC were filming, and towards the same direction this craft was going. So I sort of left to more or less pursue what I'd seen, and ended up going up on top of the White Horse and approaching sort of the area where the BBC were. And it was then that I made sort of acquaintances with a lot of people from sort of the crop circle background, Colin Andrews, Pat Delgado, and some of my good friends today. And it sort of happened that the next day down in the field, sort of about half a mile away to their left, was this large circle with 3 circles around it, in very similar fashion to the look of the craft, underside of this craft. And then the night that the actual circle appeared, the BBC cameras didn't catch it appearing, was a very sort of strange night, because we all seemed to be knocked out. We all seemed to want to just all go to sleep at that point of the night. We all just felt compelled to sleep, and awoke the next morning to find the circle there. And I just found it very strange, because we all kind of questioned each other the next day. You know, when did we go to sleep? And it's almost like we couldn't all remember when we went to sleep. And usually, you know, at least one person would have a recollection of, you know, oh yeah, we decided to go to sleep at this time or something like that, but that never happened. Yeah. So it all came about when me and another sort of crop circle enthusiast who were looking out there at the crop circles appearing at the time, decided upon making an effort to make a circle, firstly to see the difference between what we were seeing out there in the fields, what we thought was to be genuine, and what a human could do, and what sort of damage it would cause to the crop compared to some of the ones we'd seen. And also for other reasons to do with sort of supernatural events, whether there was any sort of form of contact with anything that was there, or whether any energy would, you know, sort of assimilate around us as we were doing the circle. So we wanted, really as test purposes, to go out and see for our own personal reasons whether that would make it. And so we sort of set about looking at sort of designs, what sort of design to make. It was less complicated in our mind. We didn't want to go too complex or make too big a circle, because we were purely just on the basis of research, seeing the difference between the two. The first circles was a grass sort of circle over near Warminster, and it was partly just to provoke interest through the military, because it was right next to a military base, and to just watch over it for a while and see whether they were taking an interest. Because to us, if they took an interest, then there must be something going on within the military group that was taking it seriously. There seemed to be quite a buzz around it, especially as it was just in plain sort of long grass, which was sort of what they would feed the cattle on, really. And they would just come and mow it down. So, you know, on that account, you wouldn't expect there to be much of a fuss as in towards damage, because, you know, it could easily all still be collected and used for that same purpose. And so we did see sort of military coming down and taking a look, taking a few photographs. So that was quite interesting in that respect. And then we moved on to sort of a rapeseed oil field, knowing that the crop was very brittle. And that one was more on the purpose of seeing whether any energies would sort of accumulate around the circle we made or around us as we were making it, or whether any other abnormal events would happen. And then another time where we made a couple of additions to sort of an outstanding circle that was there already. and that was sort of on sort of an experiment to see, you know, whether there was any form of contact by adding something to an existing design that could have been sort of made by some other force other than human. We took people from the sort of circle groups and like gave them an anonymous tip-off, just so that none of them would be caught out by the circle that we'd made, because we weren't out there to try and stitch people up. It was purely for our own research purposes. We found on that one that rapeseed oil is very brittle, and with rapeseed oil you more or less would always snap it as soon as you started pressing it down to the ground. And we also remember removing some of the really damaged crop and taking them with us and disposing of it. Only to find later, when we saw photographs of that very circle, that a lot of the rapeseed oil was actually perfectly bent and wasn't snapped like it was when we saw it when we made it, which was very sort of intriguing to us. Yeah, it's almost like something had come and tidied up behind us, you know, and it was sort of on that very occasion that that one happened, that people in the local village reported seeing lights and sort of strange sort of glow on the hills, which was opposite near the field where we were. So it was quite interesting to hear back through just local talk that happened on the same night. We were looking at the circle, photographing it and using a pole to sort of take some aerial view shots of it. And myself and my friend just felt compelled to add just 2 additions to that existing circle, and they weren't large portions or anything. It's maybe only sort of 2 foot square of crop that was actually pushed down in the process of that, but felt compelled to add it to this one particular circle on the actual overall design that was already there. And with that, my friend said, give us a sign. You know, he said, if there's something out there and it is intelligent, then give us a sign. And we left the field and never thought much of it, and went back to sit in the car. And I was just looking through some sort of local books in the area we were in, and looking that we were sort of more or less on one of the lines, the ley lines in the area where we parked. And with that, my friend sort of heard a sound, which I tried putting down to being me with my foot on the clutch pedal. And he said he didn't think it was that. And so I just kept on reading the book. And then I heard the same sound again with my friend. And with that, the car violently shook from side to side, which to me and my friend was like, at the time, rather scary, because there's nothing that could have forced the car to shake so violently. I mean, if people were there, you would have seen them doing it. And so I decided to sort of start the car in rather sort of a hurried fashion and get out of there. And as we sort of flew down the lane to get away, saw some lights sort of disappear behind the clouds up in the sky, and saw an owl on the fence fly off in a very sort of scared fashion. I remembered reading sort of a lot sort of further on, a few years more down the line, reading one of Whitley Strieber's books, and he explained how through different things in people's lives, trauma, stuff we do as a human condition, try to mask these things that happen that hurt us with other images or other circumstances to hide any hurt or, you know, any fear factor there. And Whitley Strieber's dealings with different people from abduction and other things led him to believe that what with the pictures people have drawn of what they claim to be aliens, having large almond sort of shaped eyes, a lot of the time they would relate to seeing something like an owl or some creature which did have those sort of eyes, which they could deal with. In their sort of mind, they could deal with that and be happy with that, rather than sort of what they may have seen. It's almost like a false sort of memory sort of that we have in our mind just to protect ourselves from that fear. Because no one could think of what we were thinking that night. And because it was quiet where we were, we discussed what we were thinking of and how we wanted to summon a circle to be made in the field, and expecting it to be made in the field that we were in. And my friend said, well, let's think of something that maybe is similar to the Star of David, or, you know, has 6 points to it, something like that. And the same thing happened after we'd left doing the meditation, went back to the woods. We all remember, more or less, just falling asleep again, just being sort of knocked out, you know, and couldn't remember when any of us actually did fall asleep. You know, it was all we kind of remembered was kind of a flash in our faces sort of thing, and just waking up the next morning. The next day, a friend of ours, a traveller, came up and told us about the circle that had appeared, but just so happened to be a 6-petaled flower. And we went down to examine it, and we found that it wasn't the circle in the middle of the 6 petals. It was actually, if you lifted the crop gently, 6-sided in the centre, so it was actually, you know, a hexagon. And they had 2 trademark D and D next to it, where Doug and Dave claimed that they made it. But to this day, even though they said they made it, we believe they put their hallmark on it after discovering it themselves. So to this day we believe, you know, that was a genuine circle that appeared, and Doug and Dave, who had claimed to make some of them just down the road anyway, may have been on their way back from making one, saw this circle and come and added their D&D to it. Because we did find the D&D part to be all broken, all the crop was snapped, but looking at the petal, and each petal individually, the crop was actually perfectly bent. We wondered how they could honestly know what we were asking for. So we had a chance in Andrew Collins' book to explain that. It doesn't really bother me what other people believe in crop circles, because it comes down to, I think, individuality and what you believe at the end of the day. But it sort of bothers me that people do think it's all just fake, you know, and people are doing that. Because if you trace circles back as far as they went, you would think, why would people want to make them back then? There was no hoo-ha or media hysteria around the subject, nothing. And like the Moan Devil picture in the book, you know, why would it date back so far back, when in times like that people would have no reason to go out and start making crop circles? So it bothers me in that sense. It bothers me also because I feel there is a genuine phenomenon out there. But also I do like the fact that these people who do make circles make some very fine art. And I think as an art form, these people do it very well. And why not have something beautiful like that on the landscape? You know, it kind of cheers people up. Just on one experience with friends, where we went past one field one night near Beckhampton. For 1 minute the field was empty. Within 5 minutes of saying we were going the wrong way and turning around and coming back past the same field, there was a design of 3 circles joined by lines between within 5 minutes. And these were large circles as well. And then to find later, sort of, you know, that after visiting them with the friends who were with me, and one friend had gone off, he'd just got in a funny mood that night, and so he decided to leave, and he said he was going to hitch back. And then finding out that the 3 of us who went into that circle ended up with sickness and diarrhoea for a couple of days, and the friend who'd left to go back never had sickness and diarrhoea, which I found very strange. you know, it couldn't be put down to any other cause but us going into that same circle together so early, just after it had formed. Yeah, because it happened sort of, I went back the next day, left my friend's house feeling very tired, even though we'd had sleep. And my friend's mother didn't want me to drive home to where I lived a few villages away. She said I was welcome to stay over because I didn't look too well. I just wanted to make the journey home, so I went home and I went to bed early. And it was only sort of, you know, the next day that I sort of felt a bit more energised again. And sort of upon getting up and having a shower and freshening up for the morning, found a triangular mark on my arm which I couldn't explain, and which, you know, took a photo of, and luckily for me I did, because it disappeared not more than 10 minutes later. And also just to find that my watch had lost about half an hour of time at the same time as well, which to me just seemed very strange, especially from feeling so sort of low to suddenly feeling sort of so awake and so alive again. Sort of UBI spawned from my mind. I just woke up one day and it was just like it was in my head, UBI. And it very much meant United Believers of Intelligence. From sort of UFO sightings and stuff, it really came about that I had an open mind, and my mind had opened up enough, and I'd seen things that no longer could I just put down to being classic ice crystals in the sky reflecting light and things like that. So UBI spawned from that. But UBI wasn't really about just two individuals. It was about people coming together and sharing the experience. I'd look at different sort of sides of it, not just the crop circles, but spirituality, sort of ghosts, a lot of sort of beliefs that people have in sort of the spiritual world and in the world of the paranormal. And it came from there, really. I would say yes, it angers me that some people make money from the subject in crop circles itself, because there was a lot of people at the time out there, and if it wasn't money, it was kind of fame, or trying to grab their slice of something, which was like deemed quite magical at the time. And I felt everyone just wanted to be recognised as someone, some sort of authority, whereas we went around not sort of trying to be recognised, but trying to look at the whole thing openly and generally. And we could see these other people just sort of jumping on the bandwagon and trying to make a name for themselves, and of course making money from sort of crop circle conferences, etc. You know, I just felt it was disgusting. But we went to one crop circle conference down in Glastonbury, and we had a lot of information and a lot to give to people there to talk about openly in sort of debate. And it was purely on the basis that we didn't have the money, that we couldn't really go in to do that. And I felt sort of a bit disgusted that that's what it had come down to, was money and such sort of extortionate prices just to go into a debate. And it just so happened that we'd met a couple of nice people out there sort of looking at the circles, and they felt that we had something better to give into the debate about the actual subject, and money to them was no object. They did have a lot of money, but they said what was more important was the actual subject itself, and they turned round and paid for myself and another member of the UBI to go in and, you know, get our point of view across. So I was quite happy to do that, but I just found that it was very sort of based around tourism and just trying to make a bit of money along the way. and my approach has always been, but this is something that I sort of felt was important and had more substance than just people making them as well. And I didn't think it was right that people should be able to jump on the bandwagon so easy. I wouldn't say that some circle making was trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, but I have seen people who've tried to do that, purely sort of on the basis of TV and the way that sometimes they wanted to make a mockery of the subject. Because you've got a subject that was at the time becoming very powerful, very in the public mind, and very open. And you could see in some ways the authorities trying to push that back, because it's a very powerful thing having too many people with open minds out there. Because the state we live in the world, where they do like to have control, even though we like to think we control our lives, they do have control over us. And I think something that's powerful and quite moving and supernatural and unexplained was sort of jumped on by certain agencies to try and sort of calm public attention by using some crop circle makers and trying to use the people that thought it was genuine and trying to stitch people up at the same time. So I'd say some of them did it for that reason, but also they probably were paid for that. But generally, I wouldn't say that everyone was out there just to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. I do know of one group that did have a weird experience. They were going out just to do it purely for those reasons. With the actual circle making, those teams were actually going out to sort of go about it in the wrong way. And their experience, I remember, was quite frightening for one person, because as he was going round the crop and flattening it, he felt, like he said, that something was watching him, and it took quite a bit to get this out of this person, but he felt that something was watching him. And as he started going round and getting a little bit more nervous, and this was people that wouldn't usually be nervous, they'd gone and made circles before. So, you know, they had no reason to be frightened in a field. They weren't doing it all on their own, there was a group of them.
Now, I went out and made some circles, quite simple affairs in the first instances, and the researchers deemed these circles to be genuinely paranormal. And what was interesting to me is that some people experienced weird paranormal effects in the circle that I had created. Now, if you're asking me, you know, why I created circles, I suppose initially to test the researchers, but because of my finding that people were having paranormal experiences in the circles we had created, it obviously opened up a completely new avenue of why I would want to make circles. Why I think the lines actually get blurred, and maybe these researchers could have quite reasonably believed my circle to be paranormal, is because many witnesses, many people who actually went into the formations actually experienced paranormal events, and these were not just researchers. So my testing to find out whether researchers could tell the difference actually produced a whole different response than I expected. And of course, when you realize that you can create something and people are going to have that sort of a response in the circles, I think it opens up a question in your mind as to how far you can go and just how far the experiences that people have will go in these circles. So I wanted to push the bounds of what I was creating, and also to see the reactions of people that went in afterwards to find out what they thought of these circles too. What you have to get over is the understanding that, you know, first, humans are making the circles. Secondly, you have to understand that circles are having an effect and that people are experiencing strange things. And then the concept of whether or not this is hoaxing or whether people are trying to be fooled, I think goes out of the window. once you realise that crop circles are real, no matter whether I make them or a UFO makes them or maybe an alien makes them, you know, they all attract paranormal phenomena. And it doesn't matter who's making the crop circle. It's a very large magical symbol, like a talisman. It has a power and an energy which goes beyond just the simple form and shape. I don't like the word hoaxing. Hoaxing implies an intent to fool, to sort of ridicule, and that's not what crop circles are about. I don't go out on a daily basis, you know, to make crop circles that are going to fool people. I go out to make crop circles that are going to give people experiences and make them happier in their lives, make them understand themselves, make them look inwards. Well, it's about a spiritual endeavour. This is why people keep coming back, because there's something good, something beneficial, which brings the Circlemakers back time after time, because they're having their own experiences and they're helping other people have experiences. I think if this was a joke, you would have seen the Circlemakers give up years ago. There must be something which obviously draws people back to keep on making these circles. And this is, I think, the fundamental question is, why do people make circles? I'm not totally angry because people make money from crop circles. Obviously there is a need for information to be passed out into the community about what crop circles are, about their location, photographs, videos, these sorts of things, people's personal experiences, people's research into the paranormal. All of these things need to be explored. You can't do that without money from somewhere. So the making of money from crop circles isn't so much of a problem. What I do have a problem with are the researchers that I believe are not doing their utmost to find out what's going on, or maybe have their own personal bias in saying that these things can't be created by humans when they haven't even spoken to the humans that are creating them, which I think is a bit of a failing on some researchers' part. What I don't like is the cloak and dagger that seems to go on in the crop circle community, whereby, you know, we're portrayed as the bad guys that cannot be approached, and then statements are made about how we can't be making these crop circles. You know, that to me, making money from that type of argument is rather sad, I think. You know, this isn't really about me. This is about everyone who's involved in crop circles, right from the researchers to the public who hear about crop circles through newspapers or television programs, or because they travel along the roads where the crop circles appear and they decide to go in and have a look. It's about everyone who's involved all over the world who has an interest. What I'm trying to do is just be as honest as I can about my position in crop circles, and my arrest, which was unfortunate, did have the effect of thrusting me into the media limelight as being a circle maker. But I can only stress that it was not my own intent to be arrested for making crop circles. That was the doing of crop circle researchers, unfortunately, who didn't like the fact that I was out trying to show them that humans can make circles. I and the rest of my team have gone out, made a circle in a field, and found out that another team was making another circle in the same field on the same night. And there was a specific design element in our crop circle which actually had something to do with the other crop circle. It was actually something in ours was pointing towards something in the other circle. And I think this was a very good coincidence that two sets of teams would be out on the same night in the same location and would be doing similar designs which have a connection between each other. And is this just coincidence? Or are the circle makers getting the urge to go to a particular field on a particular night and do a particular design? And this is the type of thing I find fascinating, you know, when you're making circles, is you have these coincidences, much of which you cannot speak about openly, because you reveal the details of the circle to people who sort of might not be ready to take that sort of information. You know, it has to be held secretly so that people can benefit most from the circle. Another coincidence that took place, I did a circle design, and we went out and made this circle, and within a similar time frame, within a couple of days, somebody else in a different part of the country, actually North Yorkshire in fact, created a circle, and this circle was very similar to my design. Now, I say that the chances of the designs being so similar are astronomical. So what we've got here is a circumstance where maybe two sets of circle makers were picking up on the same design. Now, where do we get the inspiration from? This is the big question. You know, am I simply drawing these things out of my own head, simply, you know, using my own sort of artistic ability, or am I getting some of the idea of a particular circle from somewhere else? Am I being given this idea, pushed in a particular direction? And when you see somebody in a different part of the country do a similar design like that, it makes you wonder. And obviously, I'm not in touch with the circle making team that did that. You know, it was a surprise to me. So, what is the connection? I mean, if the parallel I try to draw in this particular instance is that if I'd been able to predict with such accuracy the design that somebody had done, or to replicate the same design somewhere else, then the chances are I could win the lottery by the same technique. And it's those sorts of odds that make you think that we're not dealing with coincidence, that there is something much bigger going on. It is quite hard to sum up the many years of experiences I've had making crop circles, but I must say that coincidences and synchronicities are definitely part of the paranormal world behind crop circles. Now, you may get somebody who will predict your circle, you know, maybe a clairvoyant or somebody of that nature will say that they've had an idea that a circle is going to appear. You may get somebody come to the area and they've got a particular design which they've kept secret, you know, to themselves, and they've been asking for this design, and then that design will appear. These are all the sorts of coincidences that I think, you know, on a personal level, people see great significance in. And crop circles have a lot of elements which jar memories in people and jar ideas. They act as keys. So people will look at a crop circle, and what should by rights just be a simple design starts to become something which unlocks meaning for the person who is entering the circle. I've seen black figures in the crop circles, shadowy sort of figures that at night you mistake for other team members, because in the distance, you know, you can see some sort of black figure moving around and you assume it's a team member. And I have actually walked up and seen these figures just disappear in front of me. And friends of mine have had this also. Not entirely disconcerting either. Some people say that the idea behind seeing a black figure should be frightening. Well, it wasn't to me. It was actually quite exhilarating. I believe in ghosts, and I think that maybe whatever I saw might have been some sort of spirit form. And as I didn't feel any negative presence from the black figure, then I'm not going to make the judgment that it must have been something bad. I'm going to just sort of remain open-minded as to what that was. Other occasions when we've been making circles, I've seen balls of light, and these balls of light on one occasion entered a field and chased us out, stopped us making a circle. And I now believe that we weren't supposed to make that circle in that field on that night. And that's what these balls of light that entered the field were there to do, was to try and sort of alert us and frighten us off. In that case, yes, I felt frightened, and the emotion told me, you know, leave, and we did. So that was one other event. There was a particular night when I felt a very strong, overwhelming urge to create a circle, and my colleagues we were very charged about the making of this circle. But we knew that researchers were actually camped out in the field where we were going to be making the circle. But something told us that it was kind of, just go ahead and do it. Go ahead and make the circle. You know, you can get away with this. This is okay. Do it. And we just did. We went and made this circle, and surprisingly, we were not interrupted by the researchers who were nearby. And I was fascinated by how this could be, you know, how these researchers hadn't seen us or hadn't heard us, and how we'd got away with it. But I was running on this sort of energy thing of this is meant to be, you know, go and do this. But I sought out the researchers and asked them, you know, what they had found in the morning when obviously that field was discovered to have a crop circle in. These researchers told me that a fog bank had descended over the area of the field where we were working, and that this fog bank had obscured their view in to where we were doing the crop circle. And in the morning, the fog lifted, and suddenly the crop circle was in view, and the researchers went in. And this was very interesting to me because of the feelings that we'd had, that we must go ahead and make this circle, that this was very important, that there was a reason behind it, and go ahead. But from the other perspective, you know, that we may have had some form of protection in a fog bank, and maybe the sound being shrouded, so that we could create the crop circle, and the other researchers hadn't seen us. This was fascinating to me, that there may be an element of protection going on. We have had clouds part above us when it's been raining, and we thought we were going to get quite muddy, and we thought we were going to get mud on the crop. And we went into a field, and although it was raining, it seemed like an opening in the cloud, like an oval-shaped opening in the cloud, stayed above us for most of the circle. And this stopped the rain. The rain didn't come down on us in the part of the circle, in the part of the field where we were creating the circle. And how that can be is fascinating. These things just boggle the mind. You have to be there to see them, but they are absolutely fascinating, amazing. They draw you in, and this is what keeps Circlemakers coming back. It's because of these paranormal experiences. Flashes of light. We've seen flashes of light which don't seem to have any particular source. We've seen flashes of light coming from clouds without any thunder noise. And on one occasion, these flashes of light which were coming from behind the cloud were quite bright, and my camcorder, which could normally film stars and clouds at night, when pointed at these clouds, which should then have been, you know, sort of flashing quite visibly on the camera, you can see the stars, but you can't see any flashing. And you can hear my commentary on the tape saying, you know, oh, look at the flashes, and nothing was captured on tape. So, you know, you've got things like this which are observed when making circles. We usually say a narration. This has come from years of making circles now, and believing that we're taking part in something, you know, more than just coincidence, that we are actually picking up on messages and going out and making circles. So because of this, we've incorporated a framework, like a spiritual framework to making the circles, which involves us saying an invocation. And this invocation is kind of, it's asking for the spirits to come to the circle, to give it energy, to protect us whilst we make the circle, and also for the spirits to guide us, to give us the idea of what they want put into the circle, and also that the circle be for good, that people have positive experiences from it. And sometimes we ask as well if we can have our own paranormal experiences. And upon asking this on a couple of occasions when I've said, and please, give us a paranormal experience, a shooting star would go overhead upon my saying, that we want a paranormal experience. And to me, this is a very subtle but very personal way for me of just being, yes, you're doing the right thing. Yes, go ahead, make the circle. This is okay, and it's just a warming thing that you get back. And this is it. You see, I mean, to me, crop circles is not something that should be studied on paper necessarily. It's something that you should get into. It's something that you can take part in creating. It's something that you can get a feedback directly from. I personally think that the magic of the crop circles works best when people don't know their origin. So if a crop circle remains unknown, i.e. I don't tell anyone that I made it, then that crop circle is going to have more energy. People are going to think that it must be something paranormal, and I think by thinking the crop circle is paranormal, it becomes paranormal. I think that, like prayer energy, that if you pray for something, or if you meditate hard on a particular thing that you want, you actually draw that thing closer to reality. You actually will it closer into existence.
First started about 1995. We'd seen a bit on the news and other people claiming to have made circles and such, and basically thought, let's give this a go, see if it's possible. Not knowing a great deal about it at the time, and just went into it from there, really. And obviously, as years went on, we got more involved and got to understand different things and so on, really. Personally, at the time, I was never a believer. I just thought it was something that went on, and it was a bit naive at the time, really, back then, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was always a bit of a believer in sort of UFOs and crop circles, etc. But I sort of had an inkling that it was, there might be people behind it, and I wanted to go out and find out exactly what people could do. And that's what we did. We were very surprised the first time we did it.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably easy compared to what it looks like. Our early circles, I don't think any researchers actually found them, because they were quite late in the season and they did look very amateurish, but compared to what we thought it would take, it was, well, this is easy. Next year we can go out and we can do this properly.
It wasn't really till, I think it was the third season, which would be 97, that people actually started to notice them. I think our area was a bit dead, if you like. Nobody really used it. Mainly all went on in Wiltshire and the obvious places. And I think it took people a couple of years to realise that what was actually going on in the area.
Yeah, and the whole time we were really quite naive of the whole scene. We had no idea, we were just sort of out there.
Basically, we go to that trouble originally for our own benefit. I have to admit, originally it was probably for fun, and then it became interesting to see the sort of conclusions that other people would draw and what they would make out of it. And we just carried on doing it and got more into it, really, because people were coming up with different ideas, and there's a whole vast range of people with certain conclusions and so on, and we just carried on with it, really.
Drawing a pattern out on paper is one thing. You can make it look nice and it looks quite clever, but seeing it stamped into a field a few hundred feet across is another thing entirely. That's the reason I do it. It's my art. I'm a complete skeptic now. I'd love to see the paranormal things that other people have reported, but I haven't yet. And, it's just the art.
It is art. It's the foremost thing is the art, and I like to experiment with that in the hopes that I'm actually going to see something else, something different. I haven't had any paranormal experiences, but obviously keep an open mind, and I basically like to see what happens. The only thing I suppose you could ever really count is that there's a particular field, obviously I won't say where, and every year we go in there and something will happen, we'll get freaked out, or basically, I think it's basically us getting freaked out every year, but it's always the same field, and we're doing this for a long time, and it never happens anywhere else. So hopefully we might see some developments along that line. There must be a reason why.
I don't think it's a joke at all. I just, I do it for me and for other people who might want to see it, and somebody running around thinking it's little green men doing it is, I haven't put that idea into their heads. I can't talk them out of it, so just leave them to it. Let them think that. I can't be responsible for what they choose to believe.
I find it very interesting to see what other people think. I don't intentionally set out to deceive anybody. They just make their own ideas up, and I'm just interested to see what they can come up with, really, whilst at the same time not deliberately saying this is a hoax, this is real. It's up to them. They can believe what they will, really.
Trying at the moment with a site of mine called Total Human Solution to get out there sort of just a few demonstrations of what can be done. I mean, a lot of people believe that the whole art of circle making is the mystery, so I don't want to sort of blow the whole thing wide open and demonstrate everything that can be done all in one circle, but I do want to get a few points out there, like, somebody says, well, this can't be done because X, Y, Z. We say, well, there you go, there's proof it can be done, and they've still got the chance to sort of fit everything together for themselves.
Seems to be a lot of people out there who possibly narrow-minded. They won't. Some people are very. Some people don't accept their own views, and they refuse to look at the evidence from any other point of view. And it's a very handy thing for people to think, oh, hang on, they've proved this, so this must be the case. And then they've got both sides of the evidence, and they won't just channel into their own ideas and not look around, basically.
There's an account of an old lady who was healed in a crop circle, and that was a crop circle that we did, but we can't prove it, and nobody believes it, and it's sort of, they're using the old lady's healing as part of their research into crop circles. But I know that I made that circle. I know that, it is man-made. There's not a phenomenon behind it, and that they're wrong on that point. And I want to be able to show that if the situation comes up again. I need to be able to prove it and say, look, you're not listening to me, so here you go, here's proof. And now you have to listen. With the website, we create the diagrams of the circles before they're done, sort of a few months in advance. We encrypt them with a public key encryption system, and people can download the encrypted files. They can keep them on their own computer, and out of my way, there's no way I can tamper with them whatsoever. Then the circle's made, all the judgments about the circle are made, and then at any time, at the appropriate time, we can release the passwords to the files. The files can be opened, and the diagrams that have been created before the circle and kept safe and out of tampering's way can be seen. And it's just, proof positive. It's a diagram produced before the event, hopefully. I've sent quite a few emails out at the launch to every researcher I could think of, and it's interesting, but only about 15 are actually on the mailing list now. One in particular I've sent 3 emails to, because it was Michael Glickman. He was on a radio programme a year ago saying that he wanted to cooperate, and he wanted Circlemakers to come forward and, prove what they can do. So I sent him an email mentioning that, and he's ignored it completely. He's ignored 3, sort of stating the whole thing, and the last one quoted him from the radio show saying he wanted to work with people, and still no response at all.
I believe the website is a very positive thing. It gives the researchers and the public a chance to realise that human beings can go out and make complicated formations, whereas in the paper it will glorify it to some extent and basically not really go into detail of it. So this will give the public and the researchers something to actually go on. Particular formation that we had done, and the gist of what the researchers were saying, that it was a lot to do with ley lines and the direction in which this formation pointed. It pointed to a very significant monument, basically, and a whole tale gradually evolved as to why it faced this way, why it looked like it did, when in actual fact all we've done is gone in there and said, what should this one look like? Oh, let's do a bit here, let's do a bit there, and basically long tail came out of that as to why it was there. It's not exactly a military operation. I mean, we'd quickly sketch one. I mean, I would say that...
Well, we've got two modes working, really, haven't we? We either plan it down to the last detail, or we just think, let's get out there and do
Sometimes
one.
it's off the cuff. We just quickly scribble one down in the pub and shoot off in the car and off we go. There's other times we could plan it for a week beforehand, depending on where it's going to be, I suppose.
I think the forthcoming Signs movie is going to throw a lot of myths into the air. There's going to be a lot of people out there using the internet to try and find out a bit more. And hopefully they're going to get to my site and they will see, a bit of solid proof for them to use, to make their own minds up. THS site will prove specific circles are man-made, and those circles hopefully can be compared to the unknown ones, and people should see that there's no difference. We're not out to prove every single circle, we're just out to prove that it's possible, and people should see that it's a lot more plausible than aliens.
While we do circles for a very serious reason, I'd say there's certainly a lot of interest, certainly a lot of fun to be had from it. It's a bit strange, but it's certainly very interesting to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning and you've got to hide the car and you've got to sneak around. At the end of it, you've actually got something to show for it.
I think I should start by saying that I started making circles primarily as an experiment to find out what's humanly possible. What can be done in a field within 4 hours with 3 other people. And I think quite quickly it becomes compulsive, and you see people's reactions to what you do, and they're very unexpected reactions. People claim to be healed in our formations. People claim to have spiritual experiences in our formations. I think hoaxers, or should we call them Circlemakers, are very misunderstood. People say that it couldn't possibly be made by people because they wouldn't bother to go to that extent to do something that extreme or that complex. And that's completely the wrong way around. Of course we do. We go to the kind of the nth degree, to the most extreme amounts. I mean, the kind of formations that you're seeing appearing now in the fields are way out on the kind of far end of what's humanly possible. The triple-armed spiral that appeared in 1996 at Windmill Hill was, I think, if you measure the diameter along the curve, is 1,000 foot across. And when you have those kind of formations appearing in fields just within one night, people think that can't be made by people. But they can be made by people. I mean, basically, they are made by people. And part of the reason why you go to so much trouble is to kind of take it to something which is seemingly beyond human endeavour. So people go out to the fields, or they see it in the press, and they say, my God, this is amazing, it could not be done by people. But the motivations of the Circlemakers are to actually push it as far as possible, so people think that it can't be made by people. But of course they're made by people. What's the point? I guess for us, for our team, for me personally, we're artists, and the circles we make are our artwork. That's the point. What's the point of art? We've never played a joke on anybody. We've never rug pulled anybody. Our team, the kind of agenda that we have is not to make a formation, have someone rush in and go, all this down as well, it's genuine. And then for us to come out and say, oh no, here's all the evidence, we took some photographs and here's some time lapse of us making it. We've never done that. I mean, that was kind of an agenda for Circlemakers who kind of predated us. We just have a very separate agenda, which is to, as far as possible, disassociate ourselves from the specific formations. We've never actually specifically claimed a formation, and we never will, because the whole point and the whole power of our work is gained from the fact that they are authorless. As soon as you claim a formation, you kill it. You know, we've never personally made any money out of the formations, but you know, for us, it's you know, it's a hobby. It's not our profession. Someone like Colin Andrews, you know, he makes his living off of it, and good luck to him. He's very good at what he does. And in what he does, he supports what we do. He's basically acts as an agent for our work. So fine, you know, he's getting payment for that job. I think we crave publicity for our formations. I don't think we personally crave publicity. Sure, we all have egos, and sure, it's quite nice to sit in front of a camera. But no, I crave publicity for my formations, not for me personally. For us, though, it's kind of important, I think, to actually, because we're artists, to talk about that agenda and to try and kind of push forward the debate about crop circles and bring that kind of area into it. And to a certain extent, we have to go in front of cameras and talk about what we're doing and why we're doing it. I certainly don't crave publicity, no. I was basically, when I started circle making, my intention was always to remain completely anonymous. But to a certain extent, I was outed by George Wingfield. And once that happened, you can't really put the rabbit back in the hat. And so we decided just to, you know, to kind of go with it and use it to advantage, basically. We can talk as circle makers, but we don't have to claim specific formations, so we don't take any power away from the phenomenon. And maybe we can just kind of like throw out some interesting arguments and push, you know, just push it forward. Sure, we all have a little snicker now and then. No, I enjoy reading. I enjoy reading people talking about the formations, like when broadsheet journalists go into formations, like I did this year. For instance, the cock fractal, the one at Silbury Hill and the one at Milk Hill, the second cock fractal. And when they go in there and they say these things could not be made by people, you know, we get a kick out of that. So if the kind of residual belief in the circles kind of drops away, then the phenomenon dies and we all lose, both sides lose. Like I said before, that it's a symbiotic relationship. You know, we need them and they need us. And although bizarrely never the twain shall meet, we need each other. And the truth is out there. I mean, you know, we're sitting here and I'm talking quite candidly about what I do, but you'll believe what you believe. You'll believe if you want to say that I work for the government, you'll believe that. If you believe I'm an artist, you'll believe that. Whatever. I don't have a problem with each to their own. I mean, sure, we worry about it, but we're extremely careful. It's not to say that it won't happen, and I'm sure one day it will happen. It has happened before. Outside of this country, it happened in Hungary. I think some skeptics were actually caught making a formation, and I think they were taken to court as well. And I think they ended up paying the equivalent of £28 for damage to the crop, but it wasn't a particularly spectacular formation. But yeah, we worry about being caught. We're very careful, and if we get caught, it's a fair cop. It's interesting, actually, over the past couple of years, there's been a kind of a bit of a sea change. Well, I'll go back before. Yes, we have had trouble. We've had hang-up phone calls. We've had threatening mail. There have been attacks physically on some circle makers, not myself, and on their property. So yes, you know, there is a certain risk in doing what we do. I actually have, if you want me to show you, some of the threatening letters that we've actually received. Absolutely, yes, on several occasions. I myself have had a series back in 1994. There was 3 occasions towards the end of the season where I myself, the other circle makers, were seeing flashes of light, balls of light, kind of that were moving and crackling. More recently this year, we were out circle making in Wiltshire and saw an amazing kind of like burst of light and then a column of light. Spectacular. No sound. Completely silent. I haven't really seen like a 50-foot craft with like grey aliens hanging outside of it. But we've seen some pretty weird shit while we've been out there in the field. Yeah, on several occasions, there's been times when we've drawn diagrams and the formations have appeared in the field before we got there to make it. Certain weird synchronicities and certain, I mean, themes appear every year in the actual formations, and I guess there's a certain amount of the teams feeding off of each other. But I think there's been a lot of six-odd geometry this year, and certainly a lot of the early formations that appeared we were not responsible for, and they all had six-odd geometry, and they had very similar geometries to the stuff that we'd been working on over the winter. So there is a certain amount of synchronicity, kind of cosmic coincidence.